Hello everybody, this is Hammer Striker here. Please don't forget to check out our website. Go to our affiliates page. You'll find discount codes for things like Mantis Axe and Core belts. You'll find a link that you can sign up for Big Daddy Unlimited. They actually have things in stock and usually at a lower price than other places. Link to that cool little bore light that we use for lighting up the barrels. Use those links. It will often save you money, never will cost you any additional money, and helps the channel. Thank you. I've got on the gun on the table that's not absolutely the newest thing out there, but like everything subcompact and easily concealed, they've been impossible to find. It's a CZ P10S, which stands for subcompact. It's chambered in 9mm, and it holds 12+1 rounds. It comes with 2 of these flush mount magazines, and it does actually work with the P10 magazines, like the P10C, as long as you've got this upper set of notches. So for example, if you take some of the other CZ magazines that look almost identical, but they've only got this single set of lower notches, they won't work. But the P10C and other P10 magazines with these upper cutouts will work. Yeah, I don't see it having any sleeves available right now, so the magazine's just going to hang down, so you want to be careful not to be slamming it in there too hard. But I did take it to the range during the range footage and tested it with those magazines, and it did work perfectly. So let me pick this critter up. We'll talk about it a little bit. And of course it is unloaded. And here's the other 12 round magazine. And they do fit flush. They line up nicely right under this back strap where it hangs down and makes a nice flat flush. And you get 2, maybe 1/4 or 1/8 of a finger. Basically you get 2 fingers on the grip. Even when you get up there all the way, you're 2, maybe a half finger at most. So it really is a subcompact Glock 26, that size gun, and it's intended to be smaller. But like many of these double stack subcompacts lately, they've gone beyond the 10 round. You're into 11, 12 rounds. Now I know that's not as small and as thin as some of the little Wonder 9s lately, like the P365, that get that kind of capacity in a thinner gun. This is going to be 1.26 inches thick, so it's pretty much the same as any of the other classic subcompacts that are out there. It's 6.6 inches long front to rear, and it's 4.5 inches tall. So it's not a great big gun. It's not as small and compact as some of the newest ones out there, but it does compete well in this category. It's got front and rear serrations, a single Picatinny rail slot, which of course is not a problem with Glock having the single slot for so many years. The manufacturers have adapted to it, and pretty much anything that fits on a pick rail will fit on this. It'll be adjustable in some way that it'll allow you to line it up the way you want it to. This one weighs 24.4 ounces, which is kind of consistent with guns in this territory, this particular category of guns. And it does come with 3 replaceable back straps. The one that's installed on it in this case happens to be the small, and in the box there's a medium and a large. This one is the large, and then there's a medium that goes with it, and they're easy to change. So you do have a little ability to customize the back of the grip. This pattern is not aggressive, except at the back. It does feel a little bit pointy at the back, but the rest of it is pretty smooth, and it's easy to hold on to. It's comfortable to hold on to. Kind of show you the back. It's got a little bit of pointiness to it, but I didn't notice it hurting at the range or anything. But you can see where, if I squeeze it, then when I come back you'll see a little bit of a pattern in my palm. I didn't find it unpleasant at all, but just sitting here at the table holding on to it, I can feel those little points, which is, a lot of guns these days have kind of mastered the art of making those grippy but not at all pointy. This one just feels a little pointy. Front and rear serrations. The front serrations are deep enough, long enough to be actually functional and usable. A lot of guns will have real small, short ones here that are harder to use. And of course the back ones are very easy to get a hold of. Magazines eject well. They eject smoothly. And as I mentioned, it comes with 2 of them, but of course you'll be able to change out with other larger mags if you choose. This particular one came with 3-dot sights. These are just white 3-dot. They're pretty easy to see, pretty easy to work with. There is a version of this that comes with a tritium front sight, and I believe the back sight on that is like a serrated target sight or combat sight, which would be a blackout sight. And I'm really not a fan of blackout sights, so I kind of like the 3-dot this comes with. But if you don't like them, you can replace the rear one as a dovetail, So there's the set screw to lock it in place. Of course, it's drift adjustable. And then the front one, you remove the screw and the sight pops out, or the sight pops out. You can easily replace it. So you've got some flexibility in how you want to do it. You've got texture on both sides, texture on the front of the trigger guard with a little shelf here. So if you like to put your finger on the front of the trigger guard, there's even kind of a shelf to hold it in place. So depending on how you want to use this, it's got all the tactical features that you might like, along with a pretty decent undercut. So there is room to get your fingers right up there. And that's why when I didn't have my fingers up solid, I was only getting about 1/8 of a finger. When I got my fingers right up in there, I kind of moved to about 1/2 a finger on it. So there is the ability to get right up there on it, which helps control it. I did find that this gun was very easy to control. It wanted to stay on target. It was comfortable to shoot. It really did function well at the range. Didn't really feel flippy or twisty. So overall, it's an easy to control gun, which not all of the subcompacts are as easy to control. Some of them can be a little bit untamed when you're out there with them. When you get into these short grips and the lighter guns, some of them are a little bit feisty. The trigger on this has got the inertial drop safety, and of course it has the same drop safety piston internally, which I'll show you when I take it apart. So there's more take-up than I would expect, but it's smooth take-up. Reasonably short break, not a super crisp break, but a nice smooth break. Nice short reset, and you're right on the wall. When it resets, you're right there. And then kind of pull through a little bit of a wall and the break again. It's a very consistent trigger. I found it to be a nice trigger. It comes in right around the 5-pound mark. I found it to be a very nice trigger, especially that reset. And then of course if I let it all the way out, you're back to a little more take up than I'd expect, and then back on the wall. Overall, it's got a nice trigger. It's getting close to some of the nicer triggers that I've encountered. It's not PPQ territory. That's a hard wall to achieve, but it is a pretty good trigger for what you would expect here. The mag release is easy to get to. It does stick out a little bit, but it doesn't stick out enough to get in the way. I don't find it hitting any part of my hands when I'm operating the gun, but it does stick out a little bit, and there's a bit of a shelf on it. It's kind of contoured, so it doesn't catch you, and it doesn't really have an edge, but a lot of guns will have them a little more recessed than this. It does have ambidextrous slide stop slide release. The slide stop didn't want to act as a slide release very easily. It's really pretty much functions as a slide stop. When it's a loaded magazine, especially the larger magazines in it, it was difficult to use this as a slide release. You had to slingshot it, but it did work functionally. It worked well, gun locked back reliably, and every time we used it. To disassemble, it's actually fairly easy. You do end up needing to pull the trigger, and then similar to a lot of them like the Glocks and many others, you pull down these little tabs. It's easier if you put your hand around it and just kind of close your hand a little bit, and it takes the tension off it, and then it comes right apart. Now if I hadn't already pulled the trigger, I would have had to pull the trigger. We'll start with the slide. Everything is well manufactured. There's one design of the P10 series that I'm not a fan of, and it is this drop safety. So this drop safety is this little arm that pivots back and forth with a spring behind it, and that spring pushes it into place. And it's very easy to knock that spring out of there and have it either get in front of it or get in out of position and lose the tension on this drop safety. So that's something to inspect every time you clean this gun. I did inspect this one when I took it apart, and it was in place where it belonged. The original P10C that we had, it was out of place, and I don't remember if I had noticed it was out of place from the manufacturer or not. I know a lot of comments on that video, people had said theirs was out of place from the manufacturer. This one was in place, but if you've got one of these or any of the P10 line, that's something to keep an eye on. Make sure that that spring stays locked behind that arm so that there's tension on it. Other than that, it does work well. It's a functional drop safety, and it provides the same functionality from a protection standpoint that the piston style ones do. The recoil spring is kind of semi-captive, so it's a dual spring. The center spring, or the inner spring, is fully captive. The outer one catches on this little lip, and it's intentional, so it's meant to stay in place, but it's open at the end. Not a real problem. The captive does kind of keep them from trying to fly off. this little ridge keeps this one from flying off. But when you go to put it together, you've got to make sure you line it up right. Luckily, this is not a super heavy spring, so it doesn't have a tendency to twist on you. The barrel is well machined. Let me get the light. It's conventional rifling. It's well machined, and it's a nice, cleanly done barrel. It's got kind of a strange ramp. So at first you might think it's got a really wide feed ramp because this block goes the entire width. The feed ramp is in the middle. The feed ramp itself is decently polished and it's decent width, and I haven't had any ammo sensitivity with either this one or any of the other P10s. They'll pretty much eat anything. It's just kind of a strange looking ramp because this block goes the whole width side to side. But overall it's a well constructed barrel. And all the machining inside the slide is nice and smooth. So, really no quality control issues with the design of the slide. Put the recoil spring back in. You got to kind of line it up and push it in place. But again, it has a tendency to not want to squirm on you. And it does really like to lock in place. It's some guns it's easy to get this offset. This one locks in place quite nicely. And we'll move on to the frame. Pretty robust rear rails and decent front rails, and then really solid locking block in the middle. This whole assembly is the locking block and pivot for the barrel. And if you see here, the fire control group's at the back. So it's a well done gun. You'll see also it has a very nice robust structure here and here. These arms for the slide stop slide release are really well done and solid. So it should, if you're wanting to lock it back, it shouldn't matter which one you pick. You can see that it's a nice solid full arm. Both of them should work equally well. So again, well constructed just like the other half of it. Go ahead and put it back together. And that's all it takes to put it back together. You just slide it back on, pull it all the way back like you were racking it, and then when it goes forward, these pins automatically move up into place. It locks it in place, and you're back off functional and operational. Now, one thing I'll note, you do have to pull the trigger during either function testing or to even disassemble it. You have to dry fire it. The manual doesn't make any mention of sustained dry fire, but it came with these. With one of these little snap caps with a rubber insert, and there's 2 or 3 replacement rubber inserts with it. It's the first gun I've ever seen like this, an automatic, that actually came with a snap cap, which would imply, and the manual doesn't make any mention of dry fire beyond disassembly, it would imply that they have not designed this for sustained dry fire because they provided this. But it's just, I thought this was kind of unique. Now the only difficulty with using this is there's only one of these. It is a rebate rim, so the extractor will catch on it. So when you cycle the gun, which you have to make the trigger function again, you can see the trigger's locked back, just like most of the striker fire guns. You're going to eject this thing every time you pull the trigger and cycle it. I don't know how useful it is, really, but it's kind of cool that it's there. And again, I haven't really seen that in any other gun where they came with something like that. I've seen some revolvers with the rings, but not an automatic. They came with snap cap, a single snap cap with replaceable inserts. Now, I have seen an optics-ready version of this out on the internet, but I didn't actually see it on their site because their site's kind of poor from a search perspective and a menuing perspective, so it may be in there and I just didn't stumble across it. This is also available in a flat dark earth and an OD green. I'm not necessarily a fan of OD green, and the flat dark earths I didn't see any, but I do like the black one. But with this particular gun and most anything in this category right now, they're hard to find. They're really not in wide supply, and when you find one, if it's what you're looking for, you grab what you can get. This has an MSRP of $605. They're going for a little bit more than that right now, but should settle back down after a time. And the other ones are similar to price territory, give or take $10 from an MSRP standpoint. From an availability standpoint, that'll affect the price to some extent. I found it easy to shoot. I believe it'll be a reliable gun. The 3-dot sights, at least the ones on this, are relatively easy to see and use. So if you're looking for a concealed carry gun in this territory, this would be a good choice. With the ability to use the larger mags, sleeves would make it nicer so that you don't have to be as careful when you're putting the magazine in. Go ahead and put one in and show you what it looks like. put it in, it locks, but it does just hang down. This is the 15 round magazine. So you can see you've got the capacity available, but you just got to be a little more careful. Overall, I think it's a good choice. It competes well with others in this particular category. So if you're out looking and you're trying to find something in this size category and you stumble across this, probably a good one to look at. Beyond that, if you like our videos, please give us a thumbs up, share, subscribe, click that bell up there to be notified if you do. Check us out on Facebook, Patreon, Instagram, Twitter. We're kind of everywhere. Thank you.